Hello everyone, welcome back to the devlog series for my new project. This is devlog number 2. And before we look at the progress that I have made on the game, just a quick reminder that if you want to stay up to date on the development on this game, and also you want new pygame tutorials that I'm posting, then please consider subscribing. And if you want more frequent updates on the game's progress, then please consider following me on Twitter. I post a lot of GIFs over there, link in the description. And with that, let's get into the devlog. So, the first thing that I've added this week was a particle system. And the way that I did this was by using a slightly more complex version of the particle system from one of my pygame tutorials. So basically we have a class called particle, which takes a bunch of attributes such as the particle's x and y variables, and they were just being affected by these x and y velocity variables. And the y variable is also being multiplied by this gravity variable, which is how I got this nice effect where the particles jump up in the sky before quickly falling back down. If you want a more in-depth explanation on particles, then my video on particles will be linked in the description. So now that I had this particle system, I went about making it so that enemies explode with particles when they are killed. This was a really simple process. We just add some code here for when the enemy dies. We simply just append a certain amount of particles to the particle list, and then we just draw all of the particles in the particle list. AG Games left a comment on the last devlog video and suggested that I add a parallax background and some flowers. Now it's funny because a parallax background was actually something that I was planning on adding. So I made this cloud and quite quickly got them as a parallax in the background. And I was actually surprised the massive difference that these clouds had, and I really liked the way they ended up looking. Now the other part of AG Games' suggestion was that I added some flowers instead of just the grass that I had. But I thought it would be more fun if instead I added mushrooms that the player could jump on. The next thing that I decided to work on was a way to load in new maps. So the way I did this before, I just had the maps defined as lists in code, but now the maps are in text files and they just get read in. So the way the map loading system works is we have this list that contains the names of all the different maps, and then we just set the game map equal to one of the maps from the game map list. So now that I had this map system set up, the next logical step was to design some maps. So far I've made 3 maps using this glossy nature tile set, and in the end I will probably have about 5 different maps using this tile set, and then I will be making a new tile set for the next area of the game, which will most probably be a mine shaft. However, I'm not quite sure yet. So currently, when you have reached a certain amount of kills in the room, you are immediately placed in the next map, which I will definitely be changing later. And you will probably have to go through some sort of portal or I'll have some sort of transition to the next map. I also added a mana bar. So basically the way I want shooting to work in this game is as long as your mana bar is not empty, you can shoot. And when you shoot a weapon, it will use a certain amount of mana, very similar to the way Saw Knight's mana system works. I also have added health bars to the enemies, which basically just indicates how close you are to killing the enemy. The next major thing I worked on was an upgraded weapon system. Now before the weapon system, the weapons were actually just images that were being blitted onto the screen at the player's position with a slight offset. But now the weapons in the game are actually classes with attributes such as the player's mana and how much damage they do. So originally I was going to make an inventory system, but I ran into a couple problems. First one is that I couldn't get the actual inventory sprites to fit in with the rest of the game's HUD. And secondly, I didn't really want the player to have a massive inventory because there aren't going to be that many weapons in this game. And I decided that it would be better for players to have to carefully decide what weapons they would like to take with them, rather than just having access to most of the game's weapons. So because I decided that you can only hold 2 weapons at a time, the player's inventory wasn't really necessary. So what I did instead is just having the weapon that's not being used being drawn behind the player, almost like it's being stored in some sort of backpack. So the next thing I worked on was actually a new enemy. So I really wanted some sort of enemy that was capable of throwing bombs, because I originally dropped these bombs quite a while ago and I didn't really have a place for them in the game. Now, originally I was going to make a cannon that would fire these bombs. So I drew up the cannon, coded the logic behind the bomb, which I will go over just now. And when I got the cannon into the game, I realized that the cannon didn't really fit the rest of the game, and it just kind of looked out of place. So instead, I took the mushroom drawing I made and made a new copy of it with a much darker red color, and decided that these mushrooms would be the ones to fire bombs. Now, this doesn't really make any sense, but I feel like it fits better in with the rest of the game's enemies. In terms of logic behind these bombs, there isn't much going on. Similar to the particles, the bombs X and Y are being modified by certain velocities, and the Y is also being multiplied by a gravity variable. Then we are just checking if the bomb collides with any of the ground tiles, and if it does, we just destroy the bombs and append a couple particles. We also check if the player is close to the bomb and remove players' health accordingly. Now at this point, I got a really in-depth comment by Joe Ferreira. Sorry if I said that wrong, and he pointed out a few problems. Now, unfortunately, I haven't gotten around to fixing everything that he pointed out. However, I was able to fix one issue where bullets were not actually coming from the slimes. I also made an improvement to the wasp design, as you've probably noticed in these clips. And I also added an animation, which definitely makes the wasp feel a bit more alive than it was before. Now, I'm not completely sold on the wasp design yet, and we'll probably change it again later. As for the rest of Joe's feedback, I haven't forgotten about it, don't worry. I just didn't get around to implementing everything yet. But I will definitely be taking it into consideration for the next devlog. So, everyone, that was the progress I've made over the last week or so. If you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments. I remind you again to follow me on Twitter if you would like more consistent game updates. And if you want to keep updated on the devlog series, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you all next time.